Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 3, I guess, of the LTBCOIN project Hangout. My name is Adam B. Levine. I'm the editor-in-chief at Let's Talk Bitcoin. I'm the chief visionary officer at Human, and I have more titles that I'll be adding to that soon, I'm happy to say. I'm pretty exhausted today. I just got back from Coin Summit, where we've been in the city for the last 4 days. And still a little bit behind on today's show, so I don't know how long exactly this meeting's going to be, but we have 3 things that I'd like to go over during the time that we have today. If you'd like to join the call and you're watching this live, I've added the link to join the call to the description of the video. So if you'd like to jump in, you can do that at this point. So Coin Summit was a conference in San Francisco, mostly targeting investors and more high net worth individuals. Conferences in the Bitcoin space are a kind of back and forth of community versus investment money, and this one was definitely more on the investment side. Also, it was one of the best put together conferences that we've attended. It was a more expensive one, but it was actually a very, very well run conference, and just want to give a big shout out to Pamir for putting that together, because that's no mean feat, and it was really cool. So I talked with lots of people there. I talked with more about just general projects using these tokenization products, but when we would get to the part where it's like, okay, well, I'm starting to talk about different types of tokens, then I would start talking about LTBCOIN and kind of go down that rabbit hole. And the response was always very, very, very positive. I didn't have anybody, and we, have different people who are interested in being partners with us. And again, I think that the response has continued to be very, very good to this, just broadly speaking. With regards to the conference itself, there was an interesting trend, I thought, towards Rob, can you mute yourself? There was an interesting trend, I thought, towards a real division between people who are very interested in like remittance type of, like, I would argue, tier 1 or early tier applications for Bitcoin technologies, versus the more kind of broadly speaking 2.0 stuff that we're talking about with user created assets on top of these things. And it was interesting. For those of you who did not watch the live stream, we'll be playing a couple of the select talks on Let's Talk Bitcoin over the next few weeks, including today's episode with Andreas's panel on Is Bitcoin a Flash in the Pan? But the first talk was a fireside chat with Andreessen, with Mark Andreessen, and I don't recall the name of the other venture capitalist, but they're high profile, been around a long time, big thinkers, and it was those people who were most seeing the potential in these tokenizing projects, and Mark Andreessen called it coinitize. He said coinitize different things. And I was like, that's awesome. That's what I call tokenify. And so that was cool. And then the next panel that went up after that was an investment panel, and how do you invest in Bitcoin? And they were very, very down on these 2.0 concepts. They were saying now's the time to be starting exchanges. And now there were other things that were suggested. But the question came up, like, is this the time to develop these next generation applications that deal with stake, and could be used for stock, or could be used for really any sort of variety of non-specifically money applications, and they were not so in favor of it. So I don't know if necessarily that's good or bad. I think, again, it's better to be on the side of the guys who have proven to be really visionary over a long period of time, so I was quite happy with how all of that went down. I was quite happy that we're not the only people talking about this. So beyond that, the conference was worthwhile. I also spoke. So I didn't speak about LTBCOIN at the thing. I realized once I saw the panel, not the panel. I realized once I saw the showcase. They had startup showcases basically that were like pitches, and they had like the guy from the Bitcoin, from the Dogecoin tip bot, give his pitch, and it was a good pitch, and like there were some good pitches up there, but it made me realize that what we're doing with LTBCOIN, we really could, I really could be talking just about this project, and it is arguably more compelling than a lot of the ones that are being presented now as good opportunities. So it's something that kind of put it back in my head that we really are doing something here that, even though it's an experiment, it's a pretty compelling experiment compared to a lot of the other things that people are viewing as investments out there. So, we're not looking at this as an investment. but I think that it's really going to be worth me talking about this. So I'm looking forward to Toronto, where I'm going to have an opportunity to do that. I spoke along with Vitalik and Tim Swanson and Joel Dietz hosted and moderated it at the Institute for the Future in Palo Alto on Thursday night. And that also went really well. I basically gave the only non-technical talk that was there, and it was about bootstrapping anything, and again, using LTBCOIN as an example. Had a great chance to meet some people there who are already familiar with the LTBCOIN project. 3 or 4 people came up to me and had questions about it and already knew about it without me pitching them. So that was awesome. That's the first time that's happened. Usually I'm having to tell people what's going on with this, so that was very cool. Yeah, so broadly speaking, it was a really, really positive trip. I don't really like traveling. I don't really like doing this stuff, but I can, and I think that it's really useful for me too. So again, I'm looking forward to I view the talk that I gave at the Institute for the Future, which should be available on video within the next week, as like the prototypical talk that I'm going to give about these early bootstrapping scenarios and how that kind of relates to what we're doing with LTBCoin. So the talk that I'm giving in Toronto is actually called Early Bitcoin, or Early User-Created Assets, The Road to LTBCoin. And it's kind of going to just be a documentation of my journey there. And again, it'll be kind of a coming out for what we're doing here. Okay, so I've now talked for a couple of minutes. We have a couple of other topics that we're going to hit today, but I'd like to see if there are any questions yet. The other topics are Counterparty and what's going on with OpReturn, because there's definitely some movement there and there's definitely some noise there, and it's worth updating for people who don't know. And then I'd like to talk about the how it went with the auction for the seats, because there are still some bugs, and I wasn't actually that involved with it, so I'd like to have either Rob or Michael, who actually participated, kind of talk about that experience and what worked and what doesn't and what we need to improve moving forward. So any questions from anybody in the chat? Let me take a look at the actual chat.
Hey Adam, I've got a question. Yeah. I'm Devin. I'm D.E. Weller on the forums. Nice to meet you.
Hey Devin, nice to meet you too.
My question's kind of about organization of some of these projects. I'm kind of on the developer side. I want to get involved in doing some development, and kind of what I'm seeing on the forums is, there's a lot of ideas being thrown around, but it feels like nobody feels like they have the authority to make any decisions. Yeah, I know we're all getting that together, but I was wondering if you had any thoughts about, is there going to be kind of like a second tier? Because I don't think you're going to be able to make, there's ultimately going to be kind of thousands of decisions that need to be made as this moves forward. And have you thought about, kind of who's going to have some authority to make some decisions going forward? Should we just let 1,000 flowers bloom and, what sticks? Or, do you have any thoughts around that?
Yeah, it's a hard question, because really what you're talking about is a trade-off between redundancy and people potentially wasting time, because that's what redundancy is. So yeah, I would. Okay, so you're totally right. I don't necessarily know what to do here, even beyond if I wanted to make those decisions. So I really, throughout this project, continue to and will continue to defer to people who know better than I do about this stuff. I know, I'm an ideas guy. I know what I think I would like to have accomplished. I know that the outcome I would like to have, when it comes to these things, and I'm happy to articulate that, and I'm happy to, share any perspective with you find valuable from me. But as far as the actual, decisions are concerned, I really view all of these projects, you're not making this for LTB. You're making this because somebody needs to make it, and it'll fit into a niche within the LTB space. And, so like all of these things, to a certain extent, should have at least some sort of monetization built into it for the people who are building them. And I sort of think that that's gonna happen moving forward. One of the projects that we're working on is, well, anyways, we're not talking about it yet, because again, I'm not sure if we can do it, because it's hard with just the current tools that are available. We're trying to build tools that'll let us do something really cool, and that's going to have like a 0.5% fee or something, because it requires infrastructure and it requires real stuff in order to work it, and that should have cost. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. Enough to, specifically, we were talking about the, if I can just move on to that, if you don't mind, specifically the idea where content creators propose ideas, and then the audience votes them up or down, and tips on them. And then maybe the audience has ideas that they don't necessarily want to create, and we want to see those ideas rise to the top as well. And thinking that through, I kind of came to the conclusion that I think those are really two separate projects. One is more kind of a crowdfunding Kickstarter model where the content producers propose an idea and then people say, yeah, I want that. I'm going to pay some LTBCOIN to make sure that happens. And then the second project maybe is a separate project where there's just people with ideas but not the resources or impetus to produce those ideas. And they say, I'd like to see this happen. Can somebody else make this happen? And my thinking is that an idea is relatively cheap. Ideas. I can type out an idea in 5 minutes and then I'm done. So I don't think that should be rewarded as much as somebody who takes the initiative to produce a piece of content. So that's just kind of my thinking. Some people are saying, whoa, that wasn't Adam's idea, and that's totally a valid point. So we're kind of at that point in the discussion, and how should we move forward? Do you need to weigh in on that? Should the community kind of decide together? What do you think about something like that?
Well, my opinion about the topic is that you're right to a certain extent, but I don't think that these things are binary. I don't think that it is the creator who should be rewarded exclusively and at the expense of anybody else in the situation. So simply put, when it comes to what we're talking about here, if you haven't checked out the site we're talking about, it's called helpmewrite.co, and we're basically talking about a clone of this that then takes that and applies it to what we're doing, in terms of content creation. And instead of clicking the "I'd like to read this" button, you would send 1 LTBCOIN or however many LTBCOIN you want, and essentially it forms a bounty. So, to my eyes, this has always been about people who want to propose something. They can propose something, and if we want to pay them, that's fine. But it should be, again, like that 0.5% or 1% of the total. Something real small, because again, most of the value here, again, there you might talk about 10%. You might say, okay, well, the idea is worth 10%, the execution is worth 90%. One could make the argument for that. But again, it might be better just to... So the problem is that we want people to use this system, right? We want people to actually participate in this. So the way that I see that working, without being like, all right, well, screw you, I'm just going to, resubmit this idea, but make it cheaper for people to work on or something like that. I see this as being more of somebody submits an idea. It doesn't really matter who it is. It can be somebody who wants to write it or somebody who doesn't want to write it. They put the idea out there. People send value to it, and then whoever writes it in a way that fulfills the, whatever it is that they're doing. And it would be great to have some sort of feedback mechanism to be able to say, okay, well, we've determined that this is actually something that meets the criteria that we said we wanted here, and then as a result of that, yes, you've qualified for the release of the bounty, and it just becomes a thing that is essentially added on top. So if you want to get something published, sure, you can wait, for the weekly proof of publishing to come around, or you can do something like that as soon as it's published, you can make the argument that the bounty should be released and you should get paid at exactly that point because you fulfilled the conditions of the bounty. So again, over and over again, I think that you're going to see me pushing for bounty-style solutions where the community gets to essentially determine where the value is and what they want to see, and then put up value that we, give to them or make it very easy for them to get. But then they make the decision. Because anytime I've been, like I said, I'm consulting on a lot of projects, and people keep trying to, say that they know the answer, and I don't know the answer to this stuff, and I'm consulting for them because they don't know the answer to this stuff. So that's really what anything that we can do to not have responsibility focused on one or even several people. I don't think a council is that much better. I think a council is just the start of a cabal. So I'd rather that I be like the benevolent dictator until we figure out how to fully decentralize this, because I really don't want any of this stuff. This is more time than I mean, you get what I mean. So Dave Allen says, do you see the need to decentralize early? Yes, I definitely do. It would be great if we could decentralize as quickly as possible. I'm not sure how practical that is. I think in practical terms, it's probably going to have to wait a couple of months until we kind of get our feet under us, and then at that point, I'll be able to, well, I don't really know. Again, I'm very open to suggestions of how we should fully decentralize this. I think that there are a lot of potentials with some of these voting systems that we've talked about. But even in the case of a voting system, you have the ability for someone to come in, spend a relatively small amount of money early on, and capture the ability to control consensus for quite a while. So I have concerns about that, and at this point I have not seen a really great way to decentralize this entirely away from me outside of using something like multi-key, multi-sig, Amoven, that stuff. Anyways, I talked with Ryan Singer about that, who's working on Crypto Corp at the Coin7 event, and told him about that and what we wanted to do with it, which is basically to have it be so that so Crypto Corp, what they're doing, just in a nutshell, is there are 3 keys, right? 3 keys. So in order to create new LTB coin, you need a Bitcoin address, and that Bitcoin address can be formed from 3 keys. So if you form it from 3 keys, then we could take 1 key and we could give it to, put it in a safe or send it somewhere where I can't access it or somebody else can access it or something like that. Then Crypto Corp keeps a key, and then whoever is the editor-in-chief or whatever keeps a key, keeps one of the keys. And so whenever you want to create new tokens, you either need to have both the backup key, which I shouldn't have access to, at least initially, and the key that I normally have as the editor-in-chief, and then shoot, let me start this over. Okay, so 3 keys. I have one. Somebody else who is not me and who I don't have access to has another, and who we still trust within the network, so that we don't collude together to create new tokens. And then Crypto Corp acts as a trusted oracle, basically, with the third one, which is to say that they have a set of rules that say, okay, these are the times when we are willing to sign a transaction that comes from this key when it's requested. And so whenever we want to create that, I give my key, and then it says, okay, well, is this the time period during which new coins can be created? Does this follow the rule set that they're supposed to be created under? And we can even set this in such a way so that the amount of the transaction, the amount of the transaction can't be wrong for the week that it's in. So we really could lock this down quite a bit, and still not be at the mercy of Crypto Corp, because they only have one of our keys. They would need to get the other key either from me or from whoever the trusted person who we store the backup with. And also this could be more keys than that. We could have 3 of 5 required or something like that. So there are various options in that way. So there are lots of ways that we could potentially decentralize, but they're still a little bit further out, and a couple of months at least. Anybody else? Hey, Tim.
Yeah, Adam, actually, I had a question on behalf of a friend. So earlier this week on the forum, there was a guy named Conrad who talked about using a different method for, this is in the Avoiding Shallow Articles thread, if you guys are interested. Conrad talked about the following way to replace tipping. Essentially, if you submitted an article, in order to do so, you need to send a certain amount of LTB coin. And what this does is multiple things. It creates an anti-spam mechanism, because anybody can submit anything. But if you have to have a little bit of skin in the game, you won't necessarily waste a particular asset, unless, of course, you're rich. There's obviously exceptions to that. And I was wondering if you had any thoughts on implementing something like that from what you've seen.
Yeah, I think that we won't start with that. I think that we'll grow into it. At the beginning, I don't want there to be a big barrier to entry. So that's my primary concern. Is we're going to have a lot of content when we launch this project. There's really no doubt about that. But I still don't want to create an arbitrary barrier to entry that's going to require somebody to jump into our ecosystem before getting vested in our ecosystem. So I think in the medium term, yeah, you're totally right. We will have some sort of fee. And actually, like I said, we've got this other side of the project that I'm trying to see if it's going to work. And if it does, then that will actually kind of solve things, because there is going to be a cost to us doing this, to us creating each new article. There will be a cost if we use this system, but it allows us to do something that's really, 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 really cool, which is to say, take stake in any article that you create and treat it separately from everything else, and be paid for it separately from everything else, and have it be tradable separately from everything else. So that's my kind of obvious tease, but we're still working out the details of it. Okay, so quickly let's jump back to my notes. So Counterparty. We are right now building on Counterparty, and I want to be clear about this. We're building on Counterparty right now because I think it's the best option that's out there. I've tried out the NXT Asset Exchange. I've tried out, all Mastercoin stuff, and I've talked with the team at Mastercoin, and I am working on projects on multiple platforms. But as far as who's actually furthest ahead right now, I think it's Counterparty. So if that changes, then the math might change, and so we're not locked into anything. We are in the best situation possible. We get to do whatever we want. We get to do whatever is best. And so right now that looks like it's, working with Counterparty, and I think that it's been real good working with them so far. They've been very, very supportive and very into what we're doing. But at the end of the day, if that winds up not being the right decision, then we're totally not locked in here at all. Now, to the actual point, what's going on is that this is, again, a really, in a nutshell, example. This is a really, in a nutshell, example. Basically, the Bitcoin developers, some of the Bitcoin developers, we have not heard from all of the Bitcoin developers, but a couple of vocal ones, have said that basically Counterparty shouldn't be doing what they're doing, and that if they want to implement their protocol on top of Bitcoin, it needs to go through a Bitcoin improvement proposal. I don't really understand why this is the decision that they've made, because the change that was made was to move what's called op return from 80 bytes, which was very usable by both Mastercoin and Counterparty, to 40 bytes, which appears to not be as usable. It can be usable, but it means that they have to do something. I'm sorry, Rob? What?
Yeah, just a quick correction. There was never any 80-byte op return. That was actually proposed by Gavin in October. I mean, they were still using the multisig. They were using multisig, and they are currently using multisig on mainnet. The idea was to use the 80 bytes as a... Yeah? I mean, the thing is that they were meant to be using 80, they were planning to be using 80 bytes, they have been working on using that, and then suddenly they found themselves without those 80 bytes that they were expecting, and that's the story. There was never any 80 bytes being used on mainnet. Just correction on that.
Yes, thank you. Sorry. Yes, that's correct. This was the plan. The plan was that it was going to be 80 bytes, and then when it was actually released, it was 40 bytes. Rob, can you correct me here? I don't believe there was any warning on that, right?
Not as far as I know. I mean, I wasn't following it very closely at all, but it seemed to have come as quite a surprise to the people at Counterparty. Yeah.
So, again, there are multiple ways you can look at this, and I have heard multiple stories on this. I'm speaking with Adam Back tomorrow, who has told me, at the Coin Summit thing that he thought that the Counterparty guys were being really basically immature jerks, and that they weren't following the rules, and that there were good reasons why, and more importantly, that they were really pissing off the Bitcoin developers, because these are people who are working for free and are saying, well, if you're going to treat me like crap, then why would I work with you? Or why would I continue working on this project? And honestly, I actually agree with that. I think it's kind of ridiculous that Bitcoin developers aren't being paid. We have a couple of them who are being paid by corporations, but again, I think that this is another great use case for a user-created asset built on top of something like Counterparty. You create DevCoin or something, a real DevCoin, and you say, okay, well, all the people who do commits to the Bitcoin GitHub that are included in finalized code in this month or whatever, you could make it based on contribution, and then you say, okay, every month we're giving out 100,000 Bitcoin Dev coins, and anyone who wants to support Bitcoin developers buy Bitcoin Dev coins, because the only people who get those first are Bitcoin developers. So again, if people had the opportunity to support Bitcoin developers, especially if it wasn't Bitcoin developers as a whole, but here's this person and here's what they're working on, you could say, oh, this is cool, this person's working on multisig. I'd really like to support that. I'm going to send them a whole bunch of whatever. So I understand the argument, but I don't really understand what the problem is here, and I don't really understand why it's such an issue, frankly. And more than anything else, I think that this is really dangerous for Bitcoin, because it makes it look like Bitcoin is making arbitrary, intractable political decisions. And that's the whole point of what we're doing here, is we're getting away from gatekeepers. We're getting away from people who say, oh, yes, I see you have an idea. Too bad it's not as good as my idea. Go, jump off a bridge. And that basically is kind of the response I feel like people like Luke Dash Jr., who is a core developer, have been giving to the people who are trying to build these layers on top. My personal opinion is that if the Bitcoin developers, broadly or individually or whatever, don't want these protocols on top of Bitcoin, then we shouldn't force them to. I think that these are killer apps. And, again, once people realize what you can do with this stuff, the argument that, well, you can't do these on anything other than Bitcoin because everything other than Bitcoin is insecure kind of becomes a stupid argument, because putting these features on top of something else where before they're not on top of Bitcoin, and so they're not available on Bitcoin, but they are available on something else, and that something else is a lot cheaper inherently because it hasn't had the same run-up that Bitcoin has. I think that that is the first real, meaningful, non-2.0 type of competition that Bitcoin has never had to face yet. And I think that it's a fundamentally different environment that we will be walking into if, in fact, this is a direction we go. Something like Coin is an excellent example of a competitor that, with Counterparty applied on top, makes Bitcoin just kind of look like a joke, because it has the ability to have 512 characters arbitrarily attached to every single transaction you send, as opposed to fighting about 40 or 80. You just have 512 across the board. They want Counterparty on it. They want to support projects like this because they're looking for ways to differentiate themselves. And most interestingly of all, Bitcoin with its 10-minute long block time, while compared to the banking system, that's really, really fast, compared to, again, Coin with a 40-second block time, it is really slow. It is, is 16x slower than you would get with Coin. So I really hope that the Bitcoin devs kind of see the writing on the wall here and are like, all right, well, we're not going to stop you. We're not going to help you, but we're not going to stop you. And then this would happen on Bitcoin, and it would be better because then we can deal with everybody who has, Bitcoin already. We don't have to make them install anything different. It's very easy. But I think that my point is, regardless of what happens here, it's going to be fine. We get to do whatever the hell is best for us.
Yeah, you're right. Actually, it's kind of a dangerous precedent in a way what happened there, because with Counterparty, and again, I don't want to belabor the point. We've talked about this before, and obviously these guys are volunteering, these developers. But Counterparty speaks English, the developers do. What if this team had been Chinese? There's no clear guidance on how this lobbying process works in terms of BIPs. Like the whole purpose of Bitcoin, as you said, was supposed to be decentralized, permissionless, but it's not. Obviously, you need to go through certain channels, and that's just the way it works. So I think you're right. It will ultimately, it could, if not nipped in the bud, could push these productive projects such as Counterparty, and then you're telescoping on top of that to another platform, which brings your utility with that. And so, yeah, I think it is a kind of a lose-lose situation if that's continued. So I think that's a valid point, a valid argument you make.
Yeah, the lose-lose situation is really what we're trying to avoid here. You read, again, Luke Dash Jr. is not the whole Bitcoin core dev, but you read that guy's posts, and it's like, these are the people who are making decisions about, what we're going to build on top of Bitcoin and who gets to do what. It feels all wrong. So, I'm the kind of guy who's like, all right, people make their own decisions. You tell them the right thing to do. You say, I think that you're doing the wrong thing here. And if they choose to do the wrong thing, then it's on them. So, as far as I'm concerned, Bitcoin devs have been warned. This is pretty obvious that this is something that's happening. And again, harkening back to my comment earlier about the panel with Mark Andreessen, the people who are the visionaries and who have seen, these types of technologies come around before have identified this as a killer app, a level of feature. And so I think that that's very, very, very dangerous to ignore in an environment where everything is open source and where your competition gets to start from whatever your best work is, except they didn't have to pay for any of it. They don't have to give anything back to you. So, okay. So there is one other topic besides the auction report that I want to talk about, but let's go to the auction first. Michael, Rob, you guys were kind of taking lead on this. Can you share the experience? Because I know it didn't exactly go to plan.
Yeah, well, basically there's been some issues with, apparently, not quite sure yet, but possibly matching transactions on Counterparty. So I've sent reports to Xnova, I've given him actually the keys to the wallet I ran the auction from, and he's looking into it. So it seems to have been those. One problem was that the open orders weren't actually visible, which probably is a trivial thing to solve. So people couldn't look at what other people are bidding. It was a blind auction. That's not the problem. Then I put in bids at one LTBCOIN test for each LTB seat, and they were supposed to get matched at the highest open orders, but only one got matched. And anyway, then there was some other issues, and I'm basically working with Xnova on that.
Yeah, and the other thing that we figured out with the tokens fairly early on is that really what we need is a redemption service, so that this isn't a manual process. So that again, like you can just visit a web page and it says, send a, I don't know. We're talking about how to do this service. I know that we have a couple of people working on it on the forum, or at least thinking about it so far. But the idea is basically that you send a token to this web page, and then the web page sends you back the invitation or automatically redirects you to the Hangout. And so again, this is something that is a very, very basic, just one-step application. But it's a very basic layer that then on top of we can build all kinds of things, because essentially what we're talking about is specific tokens to push through certain types of things. So one can imagine a sponsor token that we're going to sell to represent a sponsorship for LTBCOIN, where you essentially have for LTBCOIN. Gosh, I'm so brain dead right now. So you have a sponsor token, and you go to our sponsor page, and it says, okay, put in, here are all the rules for publishing. That if you don't qualify for these, don't bother submitting anything. Rules are right up front. And then it says, okay, enter your, enter the name of your company, attach the advertisement that you want to have played during that particular slot, and select the dates on the calendar that are available and the slot that you'd like to occupy with it. So then this turns it into a kind of a first come first serve thing, but we never sell more. But it's just about first selection of space, as opposed to being about like if you don't get in, then you don't get anything. These are still one-time use only, but the order, people will want to trade. Oh man, I'm going way off in the weeds about this. Yeah. So, anyways, you put in all your sponsor information. You put in the stuff for the advertisement, and then in order to submit it, it has an address there, and you send the one sponsor token to the address, and the sending of that token actually pushes through all the information along with the payment. And so that's kind of what I think we're going to wind up seeing in a variety of these areas, because it's too it doesn't work well if we're just going to have it be like, all right, email me and then I'll send you a thing and then send you another thing. The whole thing needs to be automated, and we can maybe do that in test, but it's not going to last for very long. So I don't know if we're going to repeat the auction this week, because again, I think that there are some technical issues that need to be worked out on the decentralized exchange. First, also I wanted to mention I have an interview coming up with Xnova, who's the basically lead technical on Counterparty. He's agreed to do a voice interview if I mangle his voice afterwards, and so that should be fun. We should. I'm going to try and dig out exactly, because like again, nobody ever had an opportunity to interview Satoshi when it actually mattered. So these anonymous devs, I kind of like the idea of getting to him before they vamoose, because guys like this aren't going to stick around. He's going to be around maybe 6 months, and then he'll be gone because his job will be done. Okay, so any other comments on the auction? Okay, so we're gonna keep going on that one. We're gonna consider that one a work in progress. Okay, so there's one other proposal that I saw on the forum. I haven't had a chance to respond to it yet, and I kind of wanted to bring it up here because I have a little bit of an expansion to it. The initial plan is to issue the largest number of tokens the first week, and that'll be divided 50% between the community and the initial community, and 50% between back work that was done over the last year. So the thought has been that, okay, well, if we do that, then the second week we're going to have basically 100% inflation, because we're issuing weekly, and the amount goes down by 1% each week compared to the week before. But it still means that for the first several months while we're getting that initial money supply out there, the price is probably going to continually go down, just because there's way more trading around coming out every week. So the proposal is that we take essentially 25% of the initial money supply, or rather we take 25% of the total money supply, and we issue that initially. And so I was thinking about that, and the proposal was basically that we devote 75% to content creation, which pays content creation much better than we were going to for back work. And I guess I'm one of the largest recipients of that, so I'm not super upset about it. But at the same time, I'm really trying not to kill this thing by being greedy. So the proposal was 75% goes to content creation, 25% goes to the audience. This is a better deal for the audience because they're going to wind up with several times more on a per-person basis than they would have going with the other one. but at the same time, I think that it's a lot of money to put out. So what I was thinking is this: I was thinking that we could take 50% or 75% and do that split. Sorry. So this is talking about the 25% that we would initially issue in this scenario. So we take a portion of that and we give it to the audience. We take a portion of that and we give it to the content creators for the work that was done over the last year. And then we take the rest of it and we say, okay, let's create a long-term bounty system that says these are the outcomes that we want someone to achieve. At whatever point these outcomes are achieved, these tokens are yours. They're unlocked. You can claim them. And so these would be things like, I was thinking about a couple examples of this, and one would be like the first LTBCOIN branded wallet that achieves more than 200,000 concurrent users, or something like that. And what you could do with this is it would make it so that, yes, somebody within our community could make a LTB branded, branded wallet, and then distribute it and be wildly successful with it, or somebody who has an already wildly successful branded wallet could say, or already successful unbranded wallet could say, okay, well, we're going to brand this LTB coin because it doesn't matter to my users, but it fulfills the conditions of this bounty, and then and it's good for us because because now we're branded on this really popular wallet. And so again, like I see stuff like that, and then another side would be like we could say, here's this, here's a bounty for an article that's published through the LTB platform that causes, criminal charges to be successfully brought against like a international bank or something like that. So we could basically just like pick outcomes and take like 1% of this, whatever. I'm thinking we'll do like, it would be great if we could do like 50 or 100 of these kind of long-term outcome-oriented bounties, because over time as we succeed, they should become more attractive. And they're the sort of thing that, the same person is going to be going for all of them, so there will be repetition and competition, but there won't be that much. It won't be super redundant. People won't be wasting a bunch of time. They'll just kind of pick the things that they think they can make the most impact on and that they have the greatest chance of winning, and go from there. So again, like I don't have all the answers to this. I'm sort of thinking that this might be an interesting thing to really put out to the community and say, what are some outcomes? What outcomes do you think we should want to achieve in a year or in 3 years or whatever? And let's set up those bounties now so that people can start essentially working towards those goals, because that's what we want. We want people to work towards them now and then get to them by that point, as opposed to not. So that's pretty much what I have for today. Happy to answer any other questions about any of this stuff I've talked about or anything I haven't. Anybody on the call?
Sure. Yeah. Actually, two things. So yeah, that first issue is really interesting because you're kind of trying to prevent what's happened with Mastercoin. And again, I like Ron, I like David, so it's nothing personal. But this bounty system has really been I don't want to say short-sighted one way, but they're trying to throw everything together in a very quick period of time, whereas you're wanting to do a longer approach. Is that what you're saying with this particular bounty system?
Yeah, well, that's the thing, is I think that in practice we see that short-term bounty systems don't work. I mean, they just don't. Because people don't have time to, because again, the thing about a bounty is that you're putting it out there rather than hiring someone and saying, this is a big pile of money that's sitting here until somebody solves this problem. So that takes time for people both to hear about it and for people to come up with the solution and then to build the solution. So the problem I think the Mastercoin has is just that they're paying bounties every month. They're paying a fixed dollar amount, or maybe it's fixed Bitcoin, I'm not exactly clear, every month in bounties, and regardless of the results they get. And I think that's backwards. I think that you need the results first before you can accurately, determine if something actually deserves the bounty. And so, again, you get what you incentivize. What I want to incentivize are these outcomes. And the only way I see how to do that is not to say this is the exact metric that we need or this is the exact amount of time that you have to spend on it, but rather just to say these are the outcomes. Whoever achieves these, whenever you achieve these, and some of them can be time specific, but whoever achieves these, whenever you achieve these, that's awesome. That's exactly what we want. Please take this money because you made this thing real.
Okay, yeah, and the other thing I was going to mention, this is slightly off topic, but really plays into the strength of LTBCoin, is Oculus. For those of you who weren't paying attention this past week, Oculus was purchased by Facebook for $2 billion, and those who did this Kickstarter received zero equity despite funding it for $250,000. Now, I see a way LTB coin could have been used to issue to these, original Kickstarter coins, right? Could you maybe explain this to those in the audience who aren't familiar with exactly how this could be played?
That's a great question, Tim. Thank you. This is one of my favorite topics. So what you can do is imagine that you've got a Kickstarter page, or just go to a Kickstarter page, and on the side of it, you'll see, and on the side of the page, you will see that they have a big list of prices denominated in dollars and prizes. And so the good part about that is that people, give donations, and then they get back these reward tiers when the project is delivered. Excuse me a second. When the project is delivered. But the problem is that, and this has happened to me lots of times, is that a lot of times the project doesn't go well, and the project will take a lot longer, or yeah, so that's one side of it. The other side of it is that you can only ever back something, support a project on Kickstarter, where you actually want both the thing that you're going to get as far as the reward is concerned, and also that you're happy with the price that it's being offered at. And so this is kind of a problem because it means that, Kickstarter, one could argue, has, 0.1% of the internet maybe visiting it every once in a while or something like that. It's not that many people, relatively speaking. And then of those people who are interested in your thing, maybe it's 0.01% of the people who are visiting are going to be interested in your thing. So you wind up only being able to target a niche of a niche of a niche of a niche of a niche, and then you have to, compete with all the other projects that are on Kickstarter as well, also competing for the same types of money, or from the same types of people who you want to give you money. So what you can do with cryptocurrency is you can say, keep all that same stuff, still keep all of the that's what I'm looking for. Keep all of the reward tiers, keep them denominated in dollars, but you just add one step to it. You say, okay, when you donate money to us at the end of our campaign, when we've finished fundraising for this, we're going to issue tokens, and we're going to give them back to people at this fixed rate. And then when the project is actually ready and the rewards are ready to be distributed, instead of already knowing who we're going to send them out to, we set up a web page where we say, here's this reward tier, here's this reward tier, here's this reward tier, here's this reward tier, payable in our token, but the price is denominated in dollars. And so the price at the beginning in dollars is the same as it is at the end, but because these are deflationary tokens where they're issued at the beginning, they're issued during the Kickstarter campaign, but then never after, they're locked at that point and they can't be issued, and no more can be issued, those tokens are deflationary. Those tokens, because a good Kickstarter project, or any good project, should be more in demand and more popular when it is available for use by people, rather than when it is at the beginning of development or in development. If you've gotten to the end of a project and it's less popular at the end of your development when it's ready to go than it was when you first proposed it, then probably you've done something wrong. You've either missed the window, or in general the projects might not go so well. But if your project works, and like most Kickstarter campaigns that are successfully delivered, is more valuable at the end than it is at the beginning, or more in demand at the end than it is at the beginning, then those tokens that were given out are more valuable, and therefore you need to spend less of them in order to achieve the same dollar prices for the reward. So in practice, this would look like, I buy $10 worth of tokens for the base level reward of something, and then the price of the tokens goes up, from 1 cent each to 4 cents each. And so in order to achieve that $10 reward, I only have to spend 25% of my tokens. And then I have the opportunity of either getting a nicer reward. I could, trade it in for something that costs 4x as much as what I originally put in, and that could be a thing I'd want to do. Or if I'm someone who didn't actually care about the project but just thought it was going to be popular and successful over time, then I can just sell my tokens. And selling my tokens, I will have quadrupled my money, assuming that that's what that is. So it's easy to say, and then I quadrupled my money. But I think that in practice, we see that in cryptocurrency, that really is a thing that happens, for dumb reasons. And so I think that these are good reasons. Projects really are more valuable. Support for a project is much more valuable at the beginning of the project, when it doesn't exist and few people believe in it, than it is at the end of the project. And this is a way to reflect that. And so looping back around to what you said with Oculus Rift was purchased for $2 billion worth of assets. It was 1.6 billion in Facebook stock and 4 billion in 400 million in cash. But yeah, the people who bought Oculus dev kits and supported the project during the Kickstarter phase, they got the dev kits, but that's it. And so I don't necessarily know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I think that never intended as an investment in the company. It was intended as an investment in the technology. But even so, if they had used this method and people still were hanging on to the tokens, or still, some of the tokens were still these people, then those tokens would become exponentially more valuable simply because the profile of the project, again, has raised in such a way. So I see the same thing happening here. If the LTV model gets picked up, it's the same thing. If we have exactly the same thing we're doing, the tokens are all the same, except now we have 10x the audience, then guess what? The tokens have just gone up in value a lot. So yeah, I think that in the medium term, and again, it happens at an interesting time too, because the I don't recall if it's the Jobs Act or the START Act, but there were it used to be that the tax burden on Kickstarter campaigns was not very much, and it was mostly about fees because it was donation based. But a recent thing that basically codified crowdfunding into being legal as opposed to just quasi-legal basically made it so that there are now funding thresholds where if I think it's $100,000, $500,000, and $1 million, but I might be wrong about that. There are like fixed costs based on these tiers, and so if you're going to raise $40,000, you should really just raise $100,000 because you're already going to have to pay the fees for $100,000 anyways. Much the same with $100,000 versus $500,000 and so on. So you can see the systemic inefficiencies creeping back into the crowdfunding environment, when for a good long time I would argue that it thrived because it didn't have any of that garbage associated with it. It didn't, and it kind of did. It kind of did actually, if you think about it, because it would take 30 days for Amazon to process the funds after a project closed. So it's an interesting world that we find ourselves in, but I think that, yeah, these tokens and being able to essentially tokenize any sort of Kickstarter campaign, two of the projects I'm working on right now are using this exact model. I'm very excited. I don't think it's public yet, but I'm working on a coin with Tatiana Moroz and possibly another artist, essentially to kickstart an album and do this exact process. And so we're working on reward tiers and things like that now. I think we're actually going to start doing Hangouts, she and I, publicly about this, because I know that it's really interesting. Everybody who I'm consulting with is kind of going through the same learning process, and not super visionary on this stuff. I'm just a couple of months ahead because I've been scratching my own itch for a while now.
Did you mention the possibility of paying dividends, Adam, as well? Because this can work as a reward basis, and it can also work as a pure investment.
Yeah.
If somebody likes a project, they would just basically buy stocks based on crypto assets.
Yeah. I don't know what the legality of all of it is. I think the dividends, that was something else that was kind of pounded into me at this event, is that while dividends are incredibly powerful, and I really think that we're going to have a lot of opportunities to really cool, necessarily non-monetary stuff with it. There's, if it looks like a duck and walks like a duck, it doesn't really matter if it's a duck. It's probably going to be treated like a duck. And so I don't want to have that situation come down on us, so I'm not really talking too much about dividends. But yeah, I think that in the medium term, these are much cleaner instruments when it comes to just doing anything. I mean, that's the thing, is like, pick a project, look at what problems you're running into, and chances are pretty good that this is something that can help in some meaningful way if it has something to do with permission, or it has something to do with international logistics, or it has something even just to do with simplicity of distribution. And, like, again, the ability to send dividends to something, like, you could start a company, issue 10,000 shares, divide them up amongst yourselves. Whenever you want to raise money for whatever it is you're going to do, you just sell some of those tokens. The whole record of every dividend that's ever been paid to them is kept by Counterparty, and it's easily accessible. So there's a record there. Even if you're not a public company, you can still see what the profits are that are being distributed to the, through it. So it has the ability to be a very compelling sales tool if you actually are a profitable company, because it's obvious that you're profitable because you're buying the same token somebody else would be buying. So I don't know about ownership. Ownership is different. Ownership is different than distribution of revenue or distribution of profit. But I think that all these solutions are wrapped up in Counterparty and protocols like it. I just don't know if we know them yet. So Rich Beer says, will the LTB network be moving into entertainment like full-length feature films and music? I don't really know. Right now I've been saying we're following the Huffington Post model, but one of the other projects that I'm working on, which again is for LTBCOIN actually, this is the one that I'm just not talking about yet, I think that it would be very, very, very applicable to music specifically. And personally, I am working on a couple of different documentary projects I'm partnered with in various capacities, and at least one of them is probably going to be accepting LTBCOIN for the for being able to watch the documentary first, and it'll be cheaper in LTBCOIN than it'll be in anything else. And this is a documentary that's going to wind up not only on TV but also being distributed through Comcast and Netflix and all these other things. So I think that there are a lot of really compelling use cases for taking this and bringing in partners and saying, hey, let's help you make a deal with our community and support our ecosystem, and we'll patronize you basically. We'll come over there and say, hey, this thing you're doing is awesome, and pay you money for it, except it's money that is in LTBCoin. So I've had a real positive response as far as that's concerned. Yeah, like I said, I'm working on a lot of independent projects outside of LTBCoin, and they all have this same sort of element wrapped up in them. I'm not including everything de facto, but I think that a lot of people who I'm working with are going to want to accept LTBCoin just because we're going to be one of the first successful ones of these things. So, how far into this are we? What time is it? Hey, so we've been going just under an hour. So, are there any other questions or anything else that we should cover today? I see Eddie J has said, I don't see an API for Counterparty. Is the platform ready to support something like LTBCoin? That's sort of a good question. They are very close to ready. And as I mentioned, of all the projects that I'm looking at, they are the closest to being ready. So no, they're not ready yet. That's why we're still on testnet. That's why we're still running into bugs. We kind of knew this was the case. We wanted to be these early testers and do that stuff. But yeah, the plan is to not launch LTBCoin until they are 100% functional, to the point where I feel like we can rely on this to not. What I don't want to do is I don't want to have a situation where we have to undo everything and then start over again. Once we start this thing, rocket's lit. Anybody else?
And Adam, do you have any kind of a sense of when Counterparty is going to be ready?
They're telling me in 2 weeks. They're actually telling me in 1 week, and I'm telling you in 2 weeks because I always add, a week buffer because everybody's always wrong about this stuff. So, I've been saying 2 weeks since the first week of February, so I'm not super a fan of, don't believe me. Don't believe me. I don't know. I don't think anybody knows because, again, we're figuring all this stuff out, and until we do, everybody's going to be wrong.
Yeah. Just kind of based on what I saw going through this auction, I think Rob might agree too. I would be surprised if they were ready in 2 weeks. Just the number of bugs being encountered at this stage. So just a heads up there. Yeah. Yeah,
exactly. So yeah, so that's kind of why I'm on this. I want us to be first, but I don't want us to be first to the detriment of the project. The project is more important to me than being first is. And so I feel like we've already been first. We're already out here talking about this stuff. We're already, having these conversations in public and hopefully helping drive other people to make the same decisions that we are, or make different decisions if they think that we're wrong. So, yeah.
Yeah,
Point Aldo says, wanted to say hi from Germany. And hi.
Just to add to that, it's very important, the kind of auction things we're doing, even if they don't work, even if they encounter troubles, it's important to actually do this stuff. And, Exnova told me thanks a lot for really testing this and documenting every little step, because that's what helps iron out the bugs. Just people randomly making little trades isn't what really stress tests a system, I'd say.
No, I agree with you. And again, it's doing these things that nobody's done yet because people don't understand the reason why you'd want to do them, so therefore they're not getting tested very much. We kind of have to be those people who understand the reason why you'd want to do them and help them test it. Before we wrap this, I want to go back to my proposal, basically, not my proposal, but the proposal I'm articulating, for increasing from like the very small amount of coins released initially, and then doing the gradual per week, rollout where we'll have a lot of inflation at first, but then over time that should even itself out. And then the bounty proposal on top of that. Does anybody have any comments about that line of thinking? Because I'm really looking for feedback.
Well, yeah, as a developer that wants to get involved, that's really exciting to me. So yeah, I'm definitely in favor of the bounty. I think that would fund some development. I think you're going to need a lot of development to get the things done that you need to get done, and I think that'd
Yeah.
be a great way of encouraging it. Yeah, and you could define clear outcomes at the top, which would be helpful for those working on the projects. So thumbs
Yeah.
up
So
here.
okay, cool. So what do you think about the allocation difference? Because again, we've been talking about a very small amount. I mean, like, does the inflation argument matter to you? I mean, because again, I could go either way on it. I don't really care about the price, but at the same time, I don't want to set up a situation where it's going to look like we're failing to the outside world because we don't care about it, but they do.
Yeah, I don't know if I have an opinion on that. Someone else?
Yeah, I'll join in. I was talking to Adam about this a couple days ago. This is pretty complicated. In fact, you probably should talk to some economists about distribution models and so on. But I think that if your goal is to bring in outsiders long term, having what you had with Satoshi's model, I think that rewards early adopters to the detriment of later adopters. I'm not saying that's necessarily going to be the case here, but I think having a linear or something slightly less inflationary at the beginning will be perceived by late adopters as if they had missed the boat. I think that's one of the issues you have with like Doge people versus Bitcoin people is, oh, I missed the boat, so I'm going to create this other token. That's just my opinion. We obviously could go on for hours talking about different distributions and so on.
Well, partner funds are another interesting part. I had a conversation yesterday with, well, like I said, I've been having conversations with people specifically on the video side of things because that is not a native format for me, and I recognize that, I don't know if you guys know this, but 11% of people on the internet listen to audio and 75% of people watch video on the internet. And so for people like me, I like audio because it means that I can do other stuff while I'm listening and consuming content. So again, I am basically constantly multitasking and I'm trying to absorb information while also doing other stuff. So I think that probably is a large proportion of of people who we're already speaking to. But the real internet really is, with like the more mainstream stuff, really is in video. So so we have some relatively high-profile partners who are very interested in starting something. Encouraged them to watch these hangouts and kind of get a feel for what we're doing and see if they're interested in jumping in. But if we get a positive response, I'll be very happy to share that. And I think that, again, the more people we can partner with in this thing, the better. So I'm also it's not bothering me that we're not launching this right away and that and that it's taking a while for the technology to catch up to us, because it's allowing me, I think, to have a better view of the landscape that we're doing this project in and what's needed and where we need help, because there are definitely places that we need help. And again, on the organizational side, this continues to be a bit of a weakness for me, as was mentioned. I don't know all the answers to this stuff, and we are very much figuring it out. So if you feel like you have a better idea than I do as far as what to do about a particular thing, then please articulate it on the forums or send me an email. Forums are probably best. I still haven't set up the blog yet. I still haven't finished the papers yet. So again, it's not terrible that we're so late, because it's not entirely my fault that we haven't launched. But yeah, so far I really think that this is continuing to go just about as well as it possibly could. I have yet to see a single person who really has an argument that I don't feel like I can adequately address, and that's really cool because this is a complicated project. So are there any other comments or questions? Nope. Okay, cool. Then we're going to wrap this for the week. Okay, so my schedule. So I'm around for a week, and then I am in Toronto for 8 days, and then I am then I'm back for 4 days, but it's probably going to be mostly working on the site, rather on the shows. And then I have to take a week off. So I'm going to go to the beach or something and be unplugged for a solid week. And then I hope to come back and push for basically 6 to 9 months on this. Because when I work on this stuff, I tend to work 6 or 7 days a week, and really it's 7 days a week, and sometimes I take half a day off. So it's too much, and I'm really near burnout right now. So I'm looking forward to getting a chance to recharge, reset, and come back and change the world. So thanks everybody for being here. I really appreciate this. Journeys into the unknown are always more fun with companions, and I look forward to doing this with y'all. Have a great day.